Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Community Police Commission meeting on March 16th, Wednesday. We'll start with our land acknowledgement, and then I'll turn it over to our facilitators of today's meeting, Reverend Hunter and Prachi, who are going to facilitate. So the Seattle Community Police Commission acknowledges that we're on the traditional land of the Coast Salish people, including the Muckleshoot, Suquamish, and Duwamish people, past and present. With humility, we recognize how much we benefit from living on their land and water. The Seattle Community Police Commission honors and lifts up these tribes. We hope that this acknowledgement will encourage authentic relationships with urban Native people and all Coast Salish tribes. And now I'll turn it over to Reverend Hunter to take attendance.
Thank you, Douglas. I'll take attendance of who's here now, and then as others join us, I can add them to the attendance list. Suzette Dickerson.
Present.
Colleen Echohawk. Asha Mohammed. Reverend Walden. She's present, waving. Patricia Hunter is present. Tasha Johnson. Alina Stampian.
Present.
Thank you. Catherine Seibel, I think she's on leave. Douglas Wagner.
Present.
Thank you. Lejea Washington. And Scott Batchelor, I think, is still on leave. Prachi Davi. I believe Prachi is present. I see her square. Okay, we'll just keep moving on. Austin Field.
Present.
Thank you. Officer Mullins. Erica Newman. Joseph.
Present.
Oh, good morning. Oh,
Yeah,
Erica.
Erica just joined.
Okay, thank you. And Joseph Saya. Great. Okay, so are we at quorum yet?
I think we need one more for quorum. I think we need 9 because
Oh,
we're
okay.
at 16 commissioners appointed. And so, 50% plus 1 would be 9. But I'm terrible at math and could easily be getting that wrong, but that's my read.
Mhm.
Douglas, I think you're correct on this.
Yes.
It's 9.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I think we still need one more person to join to actually reach quorum.
All
But
right.
we could move on to department updates.
Okay, so we may be able to circle back and approve the agenda and the minutes. But at this point, I will just ask for some department updates. And so if there's someone here from the mayor's office, is there an update from the mayor's office? Okay, guess not. How about from the city council?
Hi, this is New Aldrich from Councilmember Herbold's office. And I wasn't able to be at the last meeting, so wanted to catch up on some of the things that the Public Safety and Human Services Committee has heard in committee. There was a briefing on Seattle Police Department's retail theft program and an announcement that Councilmembers Lewis and Herbold are working with the city auditor on a review of SP's retail theft program. A few grants the police department were also heard in committee. There was also an update from the senior deputy mayor about the search process for a new director, a permanent director for the Office of Police Accountability. And that's going to be in the next committee meeting as well. Things that are upcoming for committee include hearing SPD's strategic plan. And we're also scheduling race and social justice initiative presentations with the department, CPC, and others. I neglected to mention that February, the committee also heard 2021 Police Department crime report and update on staffing. So that's the update I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Newell. Thank you so much. Next, is there an update from the monitoring team?
There is. Good morning.
Good morning.
The monitoring team is in the final stages of the preparation of the final draft of the use of force assessment and getting it out at the time that was indicated prior to the upcoming April 12th community engagement meeting. There are other matters that the monitor may have comment on, but I believe that he will do that directly. And so that concludes the report.
Thank you, Ron. How about a report from the DOJ, Department of Justice?
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Brittany from the U.S. Attorney's Office. I am not seeing Matt on the call this morning, and I don't have an update to share with you.
Okay, thank you. And before we get to the balance of the reports, as a commissioner and for commission, we have a couple of questions about some letters that we sent to the mayor's office and the SPD. One is a Sunset Electric letter about the building and the question of those tenants. And we still haven't received a response. And we're wondering if, as you give your report, you could also share with us when you anticipate that we will hear from, I think we originally sent that letter to the mayor's office as well as the Seattle Police Department. And there's also a letter that we sent about a police accountability case, 2020 OPA 0749 that we sent on January 5th to OPA and Chief Diaz, and we still haven't heard anything back. So I'm wondering, as you're giving your reports, if you could address those concerns of the commission as well. And so next, is there a report from the Office of Police Accountability?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I have two updates. We did hire a complaint navigator position. That will be Troy Chen. He was previously an administrative specialist too in our office, and after going through a full hiring process, we have chosen Troy. We are excited for him to start in this role on April 13th. So what that will look like is more communication with complainants, particularly during investigations, which can be a long period of time without communication. And we're hoping to alleviate that with an additional point of contact. We also are in the process of rewriting all of our complainant correspondence. That is following a complainant correspondence project where we evaluated a lot of the correspondence and had assessments and reviews from various parties who looked at it and gave us feedback. And we are updating all of our correspondence to get in line with that feedback. So that will probably be completed in the next month. And one last update is we are working hard on our annual report for 2021. It is almost complete and will be published April 15th, like it always is. That's it.
Okay, do you have any information you could share with us about the letter that we sent to OPA on January 5th that we still are waiting from a response?
So that letter, it was primarily to Chief Diaz because it's not really action that we can take. OPA had suggested action ourselves. We're not really the ones who can take the action. And I believe we've already all engaged, including CPC members, with a couple of activities that Assistant Chief Cordner has led in response to that letter. So you may not have received a formal response, but I do believe there's action occurring and steps have been taken.
Okay, so you're saying that we have received a formal response from OPA?
No, I'm not saying that. I don't believe OPA will be responding. There's really nothing for OPA to respond to. We don't, I mean, it was more, it seemed like to me like more of an awareness issue for us. OPA wouldn't be the ones to take and lead the action anyway. It's an SPD led response. It's not OPA's place to coordinate that feedback and policy making. It's really SPD's. I took it as saying that you wanted to collaborate with OPA and SPD, and OPA certainly isn't leading those efforts. It's completely SPD driven at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Let's see, how about, is there an update from the Seattle Police Department?
Sure, good morning.
Good morning.
So update from us, we've been working on a whole bunch of different areas on updating a lot of our analytic systems and our approaches to policing. I think the two that I really want to address today, one is the risk managed demand analysis that we are doing to assess which calls that the Seattle Police Department typically would respond to. Some staffing issues may be preventing that in the real world, but theoretically within the band of calls that officers respond to, which one of those could be handled by an alternative responder of some kind, depending on how the city wants to go about handling that. And what's important about the analysis that we're undertaking right now is we're taking every call based on how it was initially received, how it actually was resolved in the end, and we are doing an analysis to figure out what the inherent risk, or the predictive risk rather, in any of these calls might be, so the city can make an informed decision about what type of a responder would be able to best handle that call. This is the most sophisticated analysis that I'm aware of in any city. And it will really be groundbreaking at giving clear guidance as to what is appropriate in the Seattle landscape. We're also moving forward with what we've been calling our pre-BLEA training program. We've actually rebranded it. It's now going to be SPD 60. And the idea of that program is to bring in new recruits and give them a 360-degree view of policing in Seattle from both a community perspective, from a government perspective, from an officer wellness perspective, basically situating them in the complexities of modern policing and how Seattle wants that to proceed. We are still developing the curriculum, but the structure and the bones and the committee structure to develop this program has been established, and we're moving forward at a rapid pace on that. I did speak with Director Grant yesterday about the Sunset Electric letter. Where we are is there's been a whole lot. First of all, we did respond initially. This has not been radio silence here. The chief sent an email response quite a long time ago, and the main point there is we are in litigation over a lot of these issues, and therefore we are working with the city attorney's office to figure out how or what we should respond on. In particular, though, the request for what were the chemical components of CS gas used, that is a very real and legitimate concern. We've identified that there were 4 manufacturers of CS gas that were deployed. I am finalizing a response with the city attorney's office, but we should have that information out shortly. The caveat to that is we know that we had purchased 4 brands of CS gas. We have those vendors, they have the chemical to their what's in the stuff. They have that on their website. It's proprietary. They will be able to answer that best. But what we cannot tell is for any particular deployment, which brand was used. We're still looking to see whether there's any further information we have on that, but that's not the way These things are typically deployed, and I say typically deployed. We hadn't used CS gas in over 20 years in the city of Seattle, but that information should be forthcoming. You have me a little bit at a disadvantage here. It would really be helpful if there's specific issues you want me to address that we have prior notice of this. I've just been sent the letter, the January 5th letter. I will have to look in to see exactly where we are in that response. But again, if I could have a little more notice about issues you want me to cover, I'm sure we can get you better answers here at these meetings. Happy to answer any questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Maxey. Austin?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Maxey, for addressing this. I really appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the answer about the CS gas. In terms of kind of the other main focus of the letter, after speaking to the tenants, I think that their biggest other concern is the fact that they were told repeatedly by SPD officers that SPD wasn't aware that the building was residential. There didn't seem to be any attempt to kind of take the safety of building residents into account, up to and including their ability to access the building. And then the other big issue for them is that when the precinct was evacuated, and they learned that the precinct was evacuated because of the fear that if the precinct burned, the whole block would burn, they're on that block. And so they were surprised that nobody ever gave them a heads up, and not just, of course, from SPD, but from any part of the city, that there was this danger that, SPD had assessed as very serious, that also directly threatened them. No attempt made to inform them, no attempt made to evacuate them or allow them to make their own arrangements, just silence from the city, even though the city had assessed, according to SPD, that there was a risk that the entire block would go up. And so what they would really like clarity on is what SPD and the rest of the city knew about them, whether their safety was taken into account during SPD's response to these demonstrations, including the decision to abandon the precinct, because for them, it seems like they were entirely ignored and that their safety was not a concern. And so that is the other main motivating, I think, issue behind the letter, not just what they were exposed to chemically, but the broader issue of, were they an afterthought? Were they ever thought about? Or were they just kind of abandoned?
Understood. And, the concerns are not falling on deaf ears. But again, I believe all of that is the subject of active litigation. And as a speaking agent for the department, I cannot in a public forum respond. I will again talk with the city attorney's office about those nuances. And I apologize. These sort of tensions between legal claims and actions and what everyone wants to know in real time, it puts us in a really unfortunate position about what we can and cannot say. But again, I will confer with counsel, and if there's more I can say, I will.
I appreciate that. And I agree with Director Grant that I think a time-saving response here is probably to have CPC, SPD, and the city attorney get together in a room to talk about what can and can't be shared with these residents and why. I think that would probably prevent a little bit of back and forth in general. And so I know that Director Grant's been trying to schedule that with you, and I appreciate your willingness to be a part of that process.
Copy that.
Thank you, Austin. Reverend Walden?
Yeah, thank you. I just have one more comment on this to Mr. Maxey and to the city, because I think on this is a broader issue. If that, what if there had been an earthquake or a major fire, and if people don't know who's on that block, or people, I think that that's a city management issue that's probably beyond the police department. But I mean, because if a residents are living next to a police department and you have a major event, I mean, you could have an earthquake, you could have a gas main going off. So other things that's not related to policing, that if you don't know who's on the block, then people might not get rescued in a timely manner. So I think that's a broader issue that maybe the police department can't solve, but I think it ought to be part of the city planning, and whatever happens block by block. I mean, you know, if it's a major earthquake and those kinds of things. So it's broader than police issues. I think it's a evacuation issue, or or about if we had a major event that's not caused by SPD, but caused by weather. I mean, caused by natural disasters and stuff like that. So that's all. I mean, I don't expect Mr. Maxey to have an answer for me. It's just a comment that I think it has to be talked about in a broader issue that's beyond what the scope of the police department could do in planning for a major event that could happen in Seattle. That's all. Thank you.
Reverend Walden, thank you for that. And if I may, I'll just respond very briefly that, you know, the Emergency Operations Center is the core planning entity for emergencies and how to handle them, things like evacuations, resource planning, coordination of all partners in a public safety or natural disaster emergency. So that is, you know, we circling back with them and getting them to organize all of the public safety partners, you know, in this context. You know, if there was a gap there in, I realize it was highly chaotic, but if there was a systems gap that prevented people from getting necessary information, I look at that and figure out how to resolve that. It is getting a little bit more complex as public safety systems are getting divided and more siloed in Seattle due to a lot of recent decision making. So we're still trying to figure out how to, you know, build these partnerships and ensure continuity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Walden and Mr. Maxey. Our last department update is from the Office of the Inspector General, and I see Inspector General Judge is here. So do you have an update for us?
I do. Good morning, Reverend Hunter. Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. Since the last meeting, I and my leadership met with Director Grant and your policy director to talk about ruses and potential public engagement opportunities around SPD's ruse policy. There was a lot of discussion just now about Sunset Electric and those experiences. And so I would just highlight that OIG published the Wave 2 report of our Sentinel event review, and a set of recommendations there was built around the experiences of the Sunset Electric residents. And, you know, really them as proxy for other people living in an area where there's a large scale police action or some sort of, could be natural disaster, where we recommend that we have a set of recommendations about having designated liaisons with residents and folks like apartment buildings so that you can have appropriate two-way communication between those residents and the city, provision of services. People can get in and out of their buildings appropriately and have access to their homes and things like that. So Sunset Electric is part of the Wave 2 report that we pushed out. We've been working on our staffing. We've hired a new policy analyst and a new auditor, public safety auditor, and we've got interviews ongoing for other things. What else? We are beginning work also on our annual report and hope to push it out much sooner than we did last year. And I think that is all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Austin?
Thank you for being here, Inspector General Judge, and thank you for your work on that report. I was curious what the status was of the internal investigation into the OIG employee who certified OPA investigations without Reedman.
Yep, I believe it is wrapping up. I don't have a certain date that I will have the report in my hands, but I will certainly give you an update and let you know.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And now I will turn the balance of the meeting over to Prachi to facilitate.
Great, thank you, Reverend Hunter. So the next agenda item is an update on the state legislative agenda work. The legislative budget session has obviously concluded, and I believe Nia is here in order to provide us with the session wrap up. Thank you, Nia.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I am going to share my screen. What I'm going to put up is the update document that we use in the SLA meetings to go over the bills. And I'm going to give you an overview of the bills that we supported or opposed. Since this year we did things a little differently, there were bills that we opposed as well. And just kind of explain where these bills ended up. Give me one moment. Share this. So this wrap up will kind of be, it will be brief. We intend to have SLA come back and do a broader wrap up that will include talking about our plans for the next session. So overall, the CPC voted to take action on 9 bills, and that's what's in this first chart here. 4 of them we voted to oppose, and 5 of them we voted to support. Of the bills that we opposed, which were House Bill 1589, this would allow police officers to use force when taking someone into custody. House Bill 1726, which modified the standard for use of physical force by peace officers. 1788, which would broaden the circumstances under which officers could engage in a vehicular pursuit, and Senate Bill 5522, which increased the like a fine for assaulting a law enforcement officer. All of those bills that we voted to oppose did not make it through the session, so they ended up dying at different points. And what I will say is that I think that because we were in a shorter session, there was less political will to push things through. So there were 5 bills that we supported, and of those 5, only 2 of them passed. The ones that didn't were, second was House Bill 1202, which was about allowing people to seek civil remedies if they are harmed due to police misconduct. House Bill 1507, which established a mechanism for independent prosecutions of criminal conduct. House Bill 1690, which concerned the use of deception or ruses by police officers during custodial investigations. And well, those were the 5 that we supported. Those were the 3 of the 5 that we supported that did not make it through the session. 2 of the bills that we supported did, so that was House Bill 1719, which was a clarification that was done in response to House Bill 1310 and also House Bill 1054, which passed last session. Those were about tactics and the tools that officers can use. So House Bill 1719 just clarified that officers still had access to like 40mm launchers for less lethal weapons. And then there was House Bill 1735, which was also clarifying based on some of the changes that were made in the last session. Excuse me. So 1735 was modifying the standard for use of force of police officers. This bill sought to clarify that officers could still go out to calls that involved a mental health crisis and could be involved in helping to resolve those calls. So both of those pieces of legislation passed. They were signed by the governor on the 4th, and they also went into effect on March 4th of this year. So those were the 9 bills that we actively voted to support. When we approved our legislative priorities, we also decided to keep an eye on a couple of bills, and those bills were House Bill 1692, which was about eliminating enhanced sentencing for essentially for drive-by shootings, and Senate Bill 5485, which was about prohibiting traffic stops for certain violations. These were bills that we kept an eye on, and both of these bills did not make it through the session. Finally, there were 3 bills that came up during the session that fell under the priorities that we voted to support. So these were bills that we followed in places where they had hearings. We made statements to kind of shift how they would move through the section. So the first is House Bill 2037, and this was about essentially allowing officers to use force if someone flees from a Terry stop. This bill went through, it was kind of an interesting process what happened here. So initially, this was a bill that we voted to oppose because it expanded when officers could use force in interacting with the community. At one point, there was an amendment on the table that would make it so that officers could not use force unless a person was intentionally fleeing from a Terry stop. And that amendment, we worked pretty closely with the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability. So that amendment kind of brought them to neutral on the bill. But as the bill was moving out of the House, that amendment was dropped, and the bill kind of went forward in the original form that did not have that kind of protection of making it clear that officers had to inform people that they were not free to leave. So pretty much enforcing that intentional fleeing aspect. The bill has been delivered to the governor. As far as I know, when I checked last night before I left work, it had not been signed. It still has not been signed. So we're still kind of waiting to see what will happen here. Last I heard from the Washington Coalition is that they sent a letter to the governor asking him to veto Section 3 of the bill. So that is still, I think that's still being worked through. But once we do our full wrap up, there will be, I'll have a more final update on this bill. The next bill was Senate Bill 5677. It was kind of a repackaging of a bill that we supported last session. I believe it was Senate Bill 5134, which was about like removing accountability aspects from bargaining and impacting how disciplinary appeals would move when it came to serious misconduct. This bill had a first reading and it was referred to the Senate Law and Justice Committee, but it did not move beyond that. The final bill is Senate Bill 5919. This was also another interesting one. This bill essentially combined some of the aspects from House Bill 2037, which was that allowing officers to use force in Terry stops, and House Bill 1788, which was about expanding vehicular pursuit rights for officers. So Senate Bill 5919 combined both of those things. And for a while, it looked as if this bill was going to advance, especially when that amendment was on the board for House Bill 2037. But since House Bill 2037 moved forward, this one ended up not moving forward on the last day of session. So it was pretty close that both of those bills were moving forward. But eventually, because there was more will behind 2037, this one was left behind. So that's where we have ended up at the close of, more or less the close of session. In our next meeting for SLA, we'll be discussing what our plans are going to be for the next session coming up, and another way to kind of give a bigger update on exactly what happened in the session. And that will be something that we're looking to do for both the commission, but also we're looking to share that publicly with the community as well. So that concludes the wrap up, unless anyone has questions. And I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everyone.
Anybody have questions for Nia or anyone else on the team who worked on the state legislative agenda? Mr. Ward?
Hi, I would like to ask of the executive director, Ms. Franco, that I be forwarded a copy of the documentation that Ms. Franco used in her presentation this morning.
Sure, we'll get that to you, Rob.
Thank you.
Make a note right here.
And Reverend Walden, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, also I just wanted to acknowledge the policy team and such a good work. Also, I see that look like the council member, President Juarez, Sarah Miles had her hand up. I had her hand up. So did you want a copy of that also?
Yes, that's all.
Okay. Okay, we can get that to you.
Franco.
But yeah, thank you. I thank you for your work. I mean, you all just was really thorough. I like what you do. You all do such a good job in keeping us informed. And of course, we got more work to do because it's a lot of things. There's still a lot of work in a short session. For people who might not understand, you don't get a lot done in a short session. I mean, it just don't have enough time. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you all. And before I step away, I do want to thank everyone who has been involved, including commissioners, especially Austin, who's been really engaged throughout the session. And of course, typical people that we lean on to give statements. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Nia. You carried the team. I really appreciate all your work and all the work of the rest of the staff.
Evan, you just went off mute. Did you want to supplement?
Oh, no, I think I'm going next on the agenda. So I might hit something on accident early.
Actually, I believe, and I do want to also kind of acknowledge and reinforce what everyone has said. It's a lot of work to monitor things during the legislative session, especially a short one. So really appreciate all of the hard work that went into that. The next agenda item, Evan, I believe, is public comment, unless I'm missing something. So
without a quorum, then it's not really a meeting yet until we have a quorum. So I don't know if we would have the right public comment. It's a public meeting, but it's not a quorum public meeting. So anyway, just wanted to point that out. So you can still do it. You can still have public comment. Just wanted to let you know, since we don't have enough people to have a quorum meeting, then that's all I was pointing out. But you can still do public comment. Just wanted to let you know that piece. That's all.
Okay, thank you so much, Reverend Walden. Okay, move into the public comment portion of the meeting then. Public comment is welcomed by the CPC. Individual speakers will be provided 2 minutes to comment about items on the meeting agenda. And I wanted to move it over to Emily, in order to open that up. Thank you.
Sorry, so Zoom kicked Emily off. We're trying to get her promoted to a panelist.
Yeah, I think she's here now. Give me just 1 second. I just promoted. So just give us like a 1 minute, y'all, and then we'll be right with you.
And if we could also acknowledge that Joseph is now in the meeting. Joseph Sayed, Commissioner.
Great, thank you for joining us, Joseph. And I was just counting to see whether or not we have arrived at quorum, but I don't believe we have yet. I'm wondering whether it would be possible to kind of move on to the next agenda item and come back to public comment. I don't want that to be something that throws the public off. However.
Yeah, hi Prachi, that's Shailene. I'm sorry, we were having some Zoom issues, which has been pretty standard lately. We're trying to get Emily back into the meeting. So I was going to suggest if it's okay to move on to the next item and then come back, we can be better prepared behind the scenes to do that. I just don't want to not have Emily not have the clock or anything go wrong with the emails, people that might have emailed in and then we miss someone inadvertently. So I would hate for that to happen. Is that okay if we come back? to that?
I think that should be perfectly fine, barring objection from any of the other commissioners. That makes sense. Zoom problems will persist throughout the time that we use Zoom. So if that's fine with everyone else, we'll move on to the next agenda item. I'm seeing head nods, so we'll move on to your agenda item, Evan. And this is with respect to, in your meeting materials, you should have a draft letter regarding use of force data, and Evan will walk us through that draft letter now to both review that letter and then we can open it up for discussion. Thank you so much, Evan.
Yeah, of course. And not surprisingly, I think I am having tech issues of my own also. So give me 1 second in terms of screen sharing. Sorry. Let's see. I guess maybe I'll just talk about it a little bit since I'm kind of unable to share my screen right now for some reason. But basically, the purpose of the letter is kind of formalized discussions I've had with the SPD data analytics team, and maybe as some key oversight. This is in regards to the use of force monitor report, and basically when the policy team took a look at it initially back, I believe in January, I noticed that the public data set they were quoting didn't have the uses of force levels listed on the public data set, although it was made quite explicit in the report itself that all the data was open and accessible to the public. So I believe I made this feedback on the report, and then this feedback eventually reached back out to Brian Maxer, the DAP team, SPD. And at that point, I met with members on the DAP team and kind of discussed, what was the reasoning behind this? Because I believe it wasn't intentional to mislead the public about it. And the eventual results were that there were two primary reasons. There is a usability issue and a privacy issue. The privacy issue was, I think DAP believed that hosting specific levels of use of force data would allow people to cross-reference and specifically identify which of these events happen in their own neighborhoods or people's specific location. Thanks, Shailing, for pulling it up. And the second primary issue was usability. And this is in regards to, excuse me, for every use of force case, there can be multiple levels of force. For example, I think if you all remember from the report, there's levels 1, 2, 3, and these can occur multiple times within a single case. And in order to display all of that, you would need multiple columns, or basically they were where the public would be confused about it on like in data set. And kind of after receiving these feedback and everything, I discussed with the policy team, and I kind of drafted this letter in a more formal way saying, I do understand that the DAP's choices in redacting some of the data or making it not 100% to the public, but there seems to be a disconnect from the monitor team and the DAP team on what's public and what isn't. And this letter seeks to clarify that and kind of ask SPD if they can make this data truly public, or if we can work towards some ground. And yeah, that's kind of about it. Does anyone have any questions? Austin, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you for all the work that you've done. I'm very excited that we have somebody who's so data oriented on the team now. I think that's going to be really helpful. An issue I want to raise, and I'm not sure that this letter is the right place to raise it, so I'm not advocating for this to necessarily be included in this letter, but I think the broader data issue with the with crisis intervention report and also with use of force reports and other products that we're seeing both from SPD and from the monitoring team is that of course all of this relies on exclusively on SPD data. And in the most recent community engagement meeting, we had community members raise that, and we had both the DOJ and SPD push back and say that there really wasn't any way to gather a lot of this information except through SPD. And so it made sense to exclusively rely on SPD data. And and so I think that I'm just raising that because, this letter and other issues kind of raise, questions about that. And I'm very excited you're here because I think that you're going to be very helpful in kind of coming up with ways to push back on that narrative, because obviously when the DOJ came to town, initially and looked at the way that SPD and the community were interacting, they didn't just go off of SPD data, they went off a whole set of information that they independently gathered as well. And so I think that that we at the CPC need to be pushing back on that idea that it's just SPD data that we need to be using to evaluate whether SPD is complying with the consent decree and doing crisis intervention correctly and all this other stuff.
Yeah, and then I think it's a great idea, Austin. Obviously, having data from a singular source and the thoughts about accountability can definitely, I would say, not grade the waters, but I can see how people would say, all this as from SPD itself. What can we do to verify? And I think that actually ties into one of the projects I'm currently working on, and it's still in the very preliminary phases. But basically, what I'm doing is I'm trying to map out how data flows through SPD, all the way from 911 calls, or when it's an officer says notices something and logs something in this computer system, or when, let's say, someone calls in and says, "Oh, I see this incident coming," how this flows all the way for the entire system down to the data analytics platform team and to the public data sets that SPD shares outside. So hopefully that can provide some clarity and we can identify specific issue points in regards to that.
Yeah, thank you.
I see Ron also has his hand raised.
Hi, I would appreciate it if this letter has been finalized, if the CPC would get me a copy of it.
Yeah,
that I
of
could
course.
pass on to the monitoring team today.
Hey, Ron, assuming that, that the commission signs off on this letter, this will be the final draft and it will go out. So we are happy to CC you on that communication.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I guess, are there any other comments? All I see are Austin and Ron's hands, and I'm assuming they've spoken already, so. I think that's it then. Thank you all.
Great, thank you so much, Evan, for all of your work on that. I think that once kind of run through that project, I think it will be incredibly illuminating. So really appreciate your work on that letter. Is there any other discussion? I know we can't vote on it today, but if there isn't any other discussion, then we'll go back to the public comment agenda item. Okay, not seeing any other hands up for discussion on the letter. We'll go back to the public comment agenda item, and I'll just start that agenda item again. Although I guess I'm seeing Shailene's hand up and I'm seeing Suzette's hand up.
Hi, I'm sorry, really quick question. Because the letter doesn't necessarily take a platform, it really seeks to clarify and ask questions. I was wondering if we did in fact need a commission vote, or is just more like an informing, we're going to ask some questions, send them up to SPD. So just clarification on staff's end. I didn't know if we did or not pushing back on the process, just wanted to put that out there just in case we could move forward. If not, we can save it for the next meeting.
Shailene, could you restate what you said before?
Yes, I was just saying, because the letter doesn't necessarily take a stance, it's more asking questions for clarification on how the process works in order to kind of what Evan was talking about, how staff moves and the things in which we seek, things we research and put together. Since it's just a clarifying letter, I was wondering if it in fact does need a full commission vote.
It might not need a full commission vote, but it probably would need to go out from at least knowing that the exec that Brandy also is involved with knowing about it. So it probably might need to have it sit also on the Brandy's from the director. Because it's just asking questions. It just raises a level of making sure you get the information back also in a timely manner. Sounds good to me.
Sounds good. Okay. I know Brandy has had an opportunity to see it, but we will absolutely finalize it and send it back up to her and the leadership team, the co-chairs, for any final review or conversation, and then we'll send it out through Brandy via our new comms person. Thanks. And then I see Suzette's hand as well, so I'm gonna mute.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, I was just wondering if somebody could please promote Commissioner Newman back into the meeting.
We will. Thank you so much, Suzette, for alerting us to that.
Does that give us a quorum now then? Because Joseph is here. I think it does.
I think so. I'm just counting, but I think it does.
Okay.
That does bring us to 9.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
For everyone, I see that you unmuted.
Oh, I was just wondering if we're at quorum, if we want to go back and approve the agenda in the minutes. at
Yeah.
some-
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So whenever, Prachi, you would like us to do that, we can do that.
Why don't we go ahead and do that now, and then we can bounce back over to the public comment in the end of the other updates.
Okay, thank you. Well, we're more than halfway through the agenda, but if I could entertain a motion to receive the agenda as distributed, that'd be helpful.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Douglas, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as distributed. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you. And the minutes were also, from our last meeting, were distributed to us. So if I could have a motion to accept the minutes.
All right, I'll move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Douglas. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Thank you, Evan Walden. I guess I should have asked if there were any corrections to the minutes. I didn't do that. But hearing none. It's been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved as received. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. All those opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. The motion is passed and the minutes have been approved. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And seeing that Emily is here now, we'll move into the public comment section of the agenda. Public comment is welcomed by the CPC. Individual speakers will be provided up to 2 minutes to comment about items on the meeting agenda. And then Emily, I will hand it over to you in order to handle this.
Thank you, Prachi, and sorry for the technical issues earlier. Before we get started, is there anyone who wants to register by voice? Okay, so we have one person registered for public comment today, and that is Dr. Howard Gale. Dr. Gale, can you speak?
Am I unmuted?
Yep. Give me just 1 second. I'll pull up your timer. Okay, and whenever you're ready, Dr. Gale.
Good morning. For 7 years, the Community Police Commission was, ironically, the only notable city commission that prohibited comment from the community. After my pointing this out repeatedly over the years, the CPC begrudgingly allowed public comment, eventually choosing to turn it into a forum where the community is given 2 minutes and commissioners are then allowed unlimited time to respond, not with constructive dialogue, but with unanswerable insults, slander, and demeaning remarks directed at community members. A bizarre and demeaning practice I have never witnessed anywhere. Instead of the CPC being the voice of the community, being used to hold the powerful to account, the CPC has become the voice of an insular and self-protecting group that attacks those without political power, a clear indication of its own impotence. The CPC has remained a group that shuts itself off in both membership and in the voices it listens to from those impacted by police violence. Do you understand now why no one else has given public comment? 2 weeks ago, Commissioners Walden and Saya responded to my public comment with wholly irrelevant claims that were both slanderous and false. They were actually worse than false. They claimed that back in 2018, I both failed to fight the SPA contract and that I undermined the CPC's opposition to that contract. The exact opposite is in fact true. The year before the SPA contract, I was the lone voice objecting to the SPMA contract, warning that concessions in that contract presaged the disaster that was to become the SPA contract. In 2017 and again in 2018, the CPC took steps to hide contract failings and undercut the ability of the community to fight those contracts. It was not me that did it, it was the CPC. You can search my name along with the terms SPMA and SPOG to discover the articles that I wrote during that time in 2017 and 18, and the many articles I was quoted in fighting these contracts. More shameful and disqualifying than the attacks by Walden and Saya is the silence by other commissioners.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gale. And that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Dr. Gale. Thank you, Emily. Does anyone have a contribution or comment in response to Dr. Gale's comment? I'm hearing.
I'll just point it out, like this is Commissioner Joseph, a tax that's a little bit outlandish, right? And just, let's just acknowledge how white privilege shows up in these meetings in terms of the targeting of Black and Indigenous leaders that are on this commission. And so, that's all I have to say is, there's a very real thing about white privilege and white fragility, and using words like attack to describe the feedback from Reverend Walden, who is a grandmother, an elder in our community. It's just ridiculous. That's all. Thank you.
I just have to have a comment. The reason why we stopped having public comment in the beginning, for all the new people who don't understand, is because at one time when we were having public comment, one of our commissioners who passed away, Kip Sakuda, he had also been in the state legislature. He was actually insulted and called it a name that was really insulting. And we as a commission did not get a chance to tell him that we were sorry, because he had a heart attack and he died before our next meeting. Some of us went up to him individually and told him that. But as a commission, we never was able to say we were sorry for what had happened, because public comment sometimes can get to the way. So it was denigrating and harmful to who had been a state senator and was on the commission to serve the commission. And he was, and so he died. So let's be clear about that. The reason why we stopped that is because it was so unbecoming of a commission, and for him to be treated that way. And we felt so much responsibility that we had not been able to tell him that we were sorry, that it happened, and that he died before that time. So let's just put it out there, and the grace about that. That's why we stopped that. And then we were consulted. Now part of our bylaws is that we do have public comment, and written public comment or by a voice. But that's the genesis of that. And so we wanted to bring humanity back, and to like let his family know and everybody know how sorry we was about that incident. So thank you for letting me just talk about history. And the reason why we stopped it is because what had happened to a representative of Kip Kakuda. And his parents had been in the internment camp. It was Japanese, and they had lived through the internment, and to be insulted at one of our meetings was just over the top for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Walden. I see that Reverend Hunter and Suzette both have their hands up. I don't know whose hand went up first, so I'll just go by boxes, and Reverend Hunter, you're first on my boxes.
Thank you. I just want to thank Commissioner Joseph and Reverend Walden for your comments. I did not know the history of that, Reverend Walden, so thank you so much. I've only been on the commission for a year, and so that is new information for me. I do think there is a way to disagree with comments of the commissioners or comments of the public without being insulting. And so I found Dr. Gale's comments insulting, and I just want to point that out. So thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Hunter. Suzette, I see you have your hand up as well.
Yes, thank you. And I would echo what Reverend Hunter just said. And, you know, respect goes both ways. And there have been comments where Dr. Howard Gale has made comments in regards to those of us commissioners that have been very pointed and, you know, and sometimes us being quiet and not speaking is so that we don't then do the same mistake and then lash out, and we are trying to be respectful in a time when we are being very much disrespected. So I want to put that out there because, you know, this should be a respectful place, not only just in, it can't be just one-sided of the community expecting us commissioners to be respectful. We also have to have the community being respectful to us as well.
Thank you so much, Suzette. Douglas, I see you have your hand up as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to underscore and add strength to Reverend Hunter and Suzette's words. You know, we work on really tough, traumatic, emotional issues at the CPC, and we're volunteers trying to provide a public service in doing so in the face of like some really tall obstacles too structurally that are really frustrating in terms of what our role is and in the city of and in terms of police accountability. And I just want to underscore their comments about just respect and just trying to be respectful, and how I think we're all doing our best to kind of just model how to be respectful in the face of tough issues that we're working through. And exactly like Reverend Hunter said, I mean, even when we don't see it a lot in like the public sphere anymore, and especially on social media, but you know, you can talk to someone about something that you completely disagree with them about in a way that's still showing respect for like your fellow, you know, community member and neighbor. And so, yeah, I'm grateful that folks spoke up about that, and I hope we continue, you know, seeing more of that. So thank you for your leadership, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you, Douglas. Austin, I see you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to voice my support for the commissioners who already spoke. I think those comments, you know, made by Dr. Gale were disrespectful and unhelpful. And I hope we're able to move forward and talk about the really serious problems with police accountability without personal attacks like that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Austin. Anybody else want to lend their voice to this conversation? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands or any boxes unmuting. I want to also echo that it's incredibly important that we maintain a respectful space within the commission and in all of our communications. This is really difficult and heavy work that we're doing. And so I really appreciate all of the voices that have been, that are raising the issue and uplifting the issue in this particular part of the agenda. Not hearing anything else, I want to move forward to the next part of the agenda, which are the Community Police Commission updates. I believe in this particular part of the agenda, I'm handing it over to the co-chairs to provide assignees for the different work group, co-chair, etc. updates. Thank you.
So, Reverend Walden, I'm not aware of any co-chair updates that we have to share, and Executive Director Grant out with an unexpected issue, and I'm not aware of any updates to share from her. Shailene, I see your hands raised. Maybe you have an update for us.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick update, especially since our partners were able to, about the annual report. As you all know, it is annual report season. The team has started. I have outlined our report and sent out an assigned section. So we've already begun the drafting process. The hope is that you all will get to see a complete and polished draft either on the May 4th or the second May meeting. We're shooting for the May 4th. I'm saying it out loud so I can hold my own feet to the fire to get that to you all. And then once we have your feedback and any edits, we will clean it up in a vote, then it'll go out. So that's what we are hoping for at this time, but we are doing that. And then also please be on the lookout eventually from Felicia. You'll receive, similar you did last year from Nia, a commissioner survey, just surveying and making sure we have all the information from you all of any engagements with the community you might have done with your CPC hats on. We want to make sure we capture that great work and it goes into our annual report. So you'll get that here in the next week or so. So just keep it out for your inbox. And then once it does go out, we will also make sure it is said in another meeting, just in case someone didn't receive it, then we can have an alternative email for you and send that back out. So just an update, and you'll have updates from me periodically over the next couple of meetings until you actually receive a draft, but we are in that process right now.
Thank you, Shailene. So we can move to work group updates. Police practices.
Thank you, Douglas. The police practices group met on March 8th, and we are in the process of reviewing. We reviewed 3 of the closed OPA cases that we thought were important to make some comments on regarding the improper use of blast balls. So we'll continue to work on these cases, and then when they are in the proper form, we will, when the form is completed, we will present it to the commission for the next steps. So that's it.
Thanks,
Thank
Reverend
you.
Hunter. Community engagement. Felicia on the call. I know we had
sorry, Felicia's not in today. Yeah. She's actually traveling to the Noble conference. It's means she's speaking and participating. Noble is for Black Law Enforcement National Conference, National Association. So she will not be with us today.
Okay. And we heard from the state legislative agenda work group already today with an update. Anything else to share from SLA?
Nope, nothing to add.
Okay. Complaint and appeals work group.
Hi. So complaint and appeals does not have a new update since our last meeting. We meet again next week. But a brief recap is we've been discussing how to move forward with the work group. We've discussed doing kind of a hybrid model of having town halls and also a work group focused on determining what the complaint and appeals process should be and what recommendations we would make to City Council around that. So that work is still ongoing.
Thank you, Nia. And I think, Nia, too, our behavioral health work group, we haven't met, I think, since the last CPC meeting. So I don't think we have an update beyond that, what we shared last time. We're trying to still place the op-ed we wrote about crisis calls.
Right, still shopping that op-ed around. Once we find a news outlet to pick that up, we will let you all know.
Okay, thank you. I think that concludes our CPC updates section. Unless I'm missing anything else, folks can let me know, but otherwise I think that concludes our meeting. Shailene, do you still have your hand raised? Or is that
it was a new one.
Okay.
I was
okay.
just going to say one quick thing, and it wraps in with behavioral health as well. The policy team this week is also virtually attending a conference through the International Association of Chiefs of Police. It's really based as a symposium based on officer wellness, and also tied in with some CIT response. So that information that they're gathering, the things that they are learning, both Nia and Evan are attending, will wrap in nicely to behavioral health if at one point there's a discussion more on CIT, but a larger discussion on officer wellness and how officers engage with the community, healthy officers, healthy streets. So we are always continual learners here on the team. So they are attending that this week. So if there are any questions you have outside of the work group, we will present some information at a later date, but anything up to date that you want to know in that topic area, me and Evan would be happy to provide, as I voluntold them in this moment just now. So just wanted to know that everyone to that as well.
That sounds like an exciting opportunity. Thank you, Shailene. Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today for our meeting. That wraps us up. So thank you for participation and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph.